Hey there, guys. I was watching YouTube the other day. Imagine that. I was watching a 1969 Strat-O-Matic Super Advanced Game stream done by good old Jeffrey Guterman. I'm going to put a link to his channel down below. You can check it out yourself. And I was watching him as he was playing, I think it was the pilots at the Angels, or maybe it was the other way around, I forget. And I was watching as he was sort of determining what the result of the play was and trying to remember things. Now, for me, it's been probably over 10 years since I last played Strat Super Advanced. And so there were some things I do remember, and then there's other things that I've forgotten about over the years, like how the fielding works and stuff like that. And I watched as he had to sort of jot down notes to himself to remember what the dice roll was and other things as he was trying to determine what the outcome of the play was. And I started thinking about that. I started comparing that to some of the other games that I'm used to playing here. And I thought I would do a very quick video, maybe a little discussion on this, and ask you what you guys think. So what do you think? Do you think that these computer games that we play are too simplistic? Do you think that it's too easy to get an answer? I mean, think about the amount of work that's involved, right? If I decide to play a game of like OOTP, I might see all sorts of stuff happening on the screen with the 3D model. If I play Action PC Baseball, I'm going to see, the chalkboard and all that stuff, guys running around or their names running around and doing different things. But I'm not really doing anything, right? The most I'm doing is deciding whether to pitch to the hitter or pitch around him or maybe walk him, right? Do I have him swing away or take the pitch or hit and run? Same thing with Diamond Mine Baseball, right? There's very, very little involvement that you do. This is true of so many of these computer games. Now, I'll have to admit, I have not played the Strat-O-Matic computer game. I can't say much about that. But I know that if you go back and you play baseball for Windows from APBA or the old APBA DOS game, it's the same thing. You basically, I used to do this all the time as a kid, P, enter, when I was playing the old DOS game, right? And controlling both teams. Because usually there's not really much strategy involved. You just kind of go ahead to the next thing. But it's totally different, right? If you're playing with the dice, even if you're playing APBA, which is a much more simplistic game than some of these other ones, right? You have your two dice in your hand, and so you roll them and you see the result, and then you have to look at the card, and then sometimes you have to roll them again to get the other result. If you're playing with APBA's master game, you have to go maybe do some algebra, try to figure out, what happened as the runner tried to advance. Was he able to get in there or not? How far away was the ball? How good is the fielder's throwing rating? All this other stuff. You feel like you're actually like playing something and making something happen, right? Strat-O-Matic, okay, we're in this situation because we had this sort of dice roll. Maybe we have to roll, one of these babies again, roll your 20-sided die, or maybe we have to roll all of the dice again, or maybe we have to do something else or worry about a chart or something like that. There's all sorts of different stuff that goes on. But when we're playing a lot of these computer games, there's so little involvement, right? It feels like you're kind of static. You're not really playing the game. You're kind of watching the game play. I think that for me, this is one of the reasons why I have such a big aversion to using autoplay. It's not that I hate autoplay. It's not that I think it's a bad thing. But when you're autoplaying through a game, you're not really playing it, right? When I go back, I read, old replays and say like the APBA journal. You get to the point where micromanager was common and autoplay was very common, usually around like 93. And then you see people writing in with their so-called replays that are automatically played replays that just have baseball for Windows set up to do a certain thing. They played the whole replay in like 2 months or something, right? They chose one team and everything else was played automatically. But I mean, is that really a replay, right? Are you really doing anything, or are you just sort of setting it up and pushing the button and it goes to the end and then you look at the results and think, oh, that's interesting, and then move on, right? I don't know how you feel about it. I feel that the more involved it is, the better you're off and the more interesting it is. However, there is a limit, right? You don't want to have a game that is so involved with so many decisions. This is what I would consider the APBA master game to be, that like you become overwhelmed and the average game is taking like an hour or more to play and there's just too much going on and you lose your concentration, lose your focus because of all the things available to you. So that's really what the question is, right? Which is, what do you think? Do you think that the computer way of doing things, I wouldn't say is like not valid or even worse, but do you think that it's just not involved enough? Do you think that it's better to sort of have your hands deep into how the game engine works? And I guess the big question is there something that could happen to a computer game to make it feel more like a board game, to make it feel more like this is really your replay and not someone else's, right? We talk so much about lineups. One of the problems I have is that You have real life transactions and lineups that are all made up for you in advance. You have it put into the system, and then you just kind of go from one thing to the next. But are you really playing, right? How is that different than, you know, writing a bunch of code and having the computer actually go through and process it, right? I mean, you know, your involvement has become so minimal that you're basically just sort of pushing the button to see the thing happen. That's a lot different than going to play super advanced Strat-O-Matic by hand, writing the score out yourself and having the whole thing happen in your mind. Anyway, I guess to each their own, right? And you can see that obviously I play a lot of the computer games, you know, and I have a big focus on them. But there's some part of me deep down inside that has a lot of respect for bringing out the cards and the dice and the score sheets and doing it the old school way and saying, you know, we don't need you to the technology and making it work the way that it should work. Love to know what you guys think about this. Let me know down below and we can have a little discussion. I'll talk with you later. Bye-bye.